Welcome back to the Fiercely Fueled podcast. I have another special guest here today. This is one of the Fiercely Fueled coaches, Joni Voss, who is not just a nutrition coach. She's also a personal trainer, a power lifter, and my favorite, because she adds so much information to my life, is that she has gone through the registered behavior technician training program. So she is like our resident expert in behavior and habit building and Fiercely Fueled. Welcome, Joni.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, the first of many episodes that you will be on. So today we are talking all about how to navigate social situations and weekends. Cause I think that, both of us know as nutrition coaches and having worked with so many people that this is the hardest thing for people to navigate when they're starting to make some changes, or even just in general, like they're good, they're quote unquote good during the week, and then kind of everything falls apart during the weekends. They're not sure, like, where is the balance between being a little bit flexible at a social situation versus, like, you know, diving headfirst into the charcuterie tray, you know? So let's talk a little bit about, like, how do you navigate this stuff with clients?
You know, the first approach is, where are they at currently in their nutrition? Are they in a deficit? Is that deficit a just personal choice, or is it them prepping for a meet where they have to be a certain weight on a certain date? Are they in a maintenance? Are they in a surplus? So establishing that first and foremost, then we can start navigating where things might be. Obviously, the deficit is where it's going to be, all right, we really have to strategize how to approach this, because as has been said before on this podcast, life doesn't stop. Regardless of what we're working on and what our goals are, we're always faced with life every day. So having more tools in your toolbox is what's going to help you be successful.
Yes. What we have seen so many times, and I'm sure you've probably done it. I know I've done it, where you think like, okay, I need to make this change, for whatever reason, whatever your goal is, you're going to make some change with your nutrition. And suddenly it feels like, okay, that means I can't go out to dinner. I can't go. My friends just invited me over for wine. I can't do that. I can't go to any social functions, or, like, heaven forbid there be a holiday thrown in there. Yeah. It's like, how do you navigate that? And what does that look like? You know, you touched on a really important point. It's going to be dependent upon your goal. So there are times where I have gone to a holiday where I brought my own food because I had to make weight for a meet that was in 2 weeks. So that, and I was not close. So that was, you know, okay, there's no room for error here. It was a really big meet. So we also have to look at that too. Is it a local meet versus a big national or international level meet? Are you trying to break some records? That stuff, we kind of have to look at that and think about how you handle the situation is going to be dependent upon the end goal and how important it is, right? Like, there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room. If you're working to lose some body fat over a period of time, and there happens to be a wedding or something thrown in there, like, one day, I think we can agree, one day probably isn't going to make that big of a difference. And it's more important to experience that event in a way that feels, you know, normal for you, as long as normal is not super self-destructive, because we don't want to also be encouraging self-destructive behaviors. But, you know, that's going to look a lot different than if you're going to the wedding and you have a meet in 4 days that you have to make weight for, and you're flying across the world to lift at that meet, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the biggest things too is we're looking at weekends and social situations, and the key word in there is social. So yes, food is communal and it's cultural and it's all these things besides fuel. It's a part of us as people. But the reason we do these events is to have that experience and time with other people. So once we can also be like, hey, the priority in this situation is that I'm with my family or my friends and I'm enjoying this time, and look at food a little more objectively that way. And then that can allow you to kind of reassess what your value is in that moment. Are you going to prioritize that meat and the goals you've been working on? Is that kind of more valuable than like eating 2 pieces of cake? Or is it, hey, my mom made this very special cake. She only makes it once a year. I'm going to enjoy a piece and I'm going to move along and enjoy my time with my family, because really those instances are about spending time with people. And if we can kind of take a deep breath, put the fork down and kind of give it a little less power and realize, hey, I'm here for the people I'm wanting to spend time with. Then we can start kind of working backwards from there of like how to approach that situation to still sustain what you're working on.
I love that you brought up even like the meaning of the cake, right? Because sometimes it has no meaning. It's just this delicious thing that's in front of us. And other times it has really important meaning. Like you said, like something special someone made for you. And that's, obviously that has to be navigated. And so even thinking about what is the meaning of it in that situation is, I think, something a lot of people don't even consider.
Right. Hopefully, most people won't look at you sideways if you're not drinking half a bottle of wine versus having a glass of wine and then switching to water because you're in a deficit right now, or you don't want overconsumption of something to negatively impact your recovery or your training the next day. Or, a lot of people who listen to this podcast have probably, meal prepped for a while and eat really healthy. I'm not going to say clean, but really eat really optimally. And like, even for myself, I don't feel well when I go out and eat a lot of foods that are not in my normal repertoire. Like having a plate of nachos at a restaurant is not going to jive with my body anymore. So, I'm not going to feel great the next day. So there's also looking at that. If you've been eating a certain way for a while, these foods might not serve you well anymore in a larger capacity.
For sure. I think we've all been through that. Some food that we used to love and eat all the time, we haven't had in a while. Suddenly we eat and it's like, oh my gosh, how did I ever eat this before? I feel terrible.
Yes, definitely. I actually just had that with the Halloween candy. We took a bite of like a Twix and I was like, this doesn't taste good anymore. Like I want real chocolate if I'm going to have chocolate.
Yes. Yeah. I used to work with a client who talked about, we finally came to a point with food with her where instead of looking at things from a restrictive mindset, which is so common, whether you're thinking about just your food is fueling your training and things like that. Even if you're just eating at maintenance, you're trying to get stronger and fuel your body properly, you can still have that kind of restrictive mindset with food of like, oh, but I can't have cake or I can't have chocolate or I can't have wine. Instead, thinking about it, the place we got to was thinking about it in terms of let's make choices that make you feel good. And sometimes that choice may be, I ate a piece of cake, this cake that my mom never makes and she made it for me. That might be the thing that actually makes you feel good. Or it might be making the decision of, man, when I have wine, it makes me anxious. It impacts my sleep. The next day is really difficult. So that makes me not feel well. So I'm going to choose to not have the wine instead of like, I can't have wine.
Yes, definitely. And I think, depending on what decade you grew up, we have decades of fear mongering, and then came this whole all or nothing mentality and like no days off and all that. And it definitely ebbed into the nutrition space. And, you know, people are just trying to find a happy medium so they can still live their lives. But so many shifts happen within nutrition and the fitness space that I think people feel like they just kind of got tossed back and forth of like, what do I do then? You know, and obviously that's where a place like Fiercely Fueled comes in and why we're here to help. But especially with social and weekends and things like that, like even I personally experienced a lot of anxiety going to restaurants. Like I had developed a really not good relationship in terms of if I eat that, I'm going to put back all this weight I lost, or I'm not going to be, you know, such and such person that I have image in my mind because I'm eating a certain way. And so I've been happy to see that shift in the nutrition space of taking morals away from food. Food is not good or bad. It doesn't have morals. It just exists, right? So we can give it as much power as we want to. So kind of having that and being able to detach from that, and again, looking at it a little more objectively, I think is really helpful. And I'm happy to see that that's starting to shift that way within the nutrition space. And we're going, all right, everybody, slow down and let's be realistic here.
Oh, for sure. I have a friend whose mom once was like, I bet you never, ever eat potato chips. And I was like, funny you bring up potato chips specifically, because that happens to be like one of my favorite foods. Obviously, I mean, I have like no nutritional value really. I mean, just fat and salt and some carbohydrates. But is it the healthiest thing to eat? No. But do I eat them? Yes, because it's something that I enjoy. And we have to remember at the end of the day, we are not machines. We are not robots. You do not just put gasoline in your tank and just go on, right? There's all sorts of things that are involved in our food and our decisions. And one of the things that I think had been really detrimental to me in my 20s was like thinking of all of those foods as off limits. So then what's the first thing that happened once I got my hands on those foods? Like
you go bananas with it.
Yes. I eat like way more than I would normally eat. And then that comes with its own negative feelings, right? You feel like you've failed at something, or you were bad, quote unquote bad. And then also that can really, just the fact that you ate so much of a food you don't normally eat. We were talking about not feeling well physically, but you can also not feel well mentally from it. You know, you can really just kind of feel like blah, like anyone that's had like a sugar hangover, right? Has that ever happened to you? You wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I don't feel good. And mentally too, like I mentally am like a little bit more bummed out today. Like maybe had too much, dopamine release or serotonin from all that sugar.
Big hormonal dump. Yeah. And it can become a really vicious cycle of just like gorging yourself on something that you told yourself no. And then like, well, I failed and I fell off the boat, so I'm going to regorge myself. I did it again. And it just becomes this horrible loop-de-loop of, you know, self-loathing around food. And then food kind of becomes the enemy. And you know, we really, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking, especially as a nutrition coach. And I know how that feels. So being able to incorporate foods that you love, like my husband and I love donuts. And instead of wedding cake, when we got married, we had donuts from our favorite donut place, right?
I love it.
Yeah. Because did I eat the entire box? No. Like I cut a piece of like the ones that I wanted to try, and it probably equaled like a donut and a half or whatever. But I enjoyed it. I was like, I knew like, hey, if I eat all these donuts, I am not going to feel good. So, but you know what? I'm going to eat a donut. So here I go. I'm going to cut up the ones I want to try, and then I'm going to go socialize and be with people. And my next meal is absolutely going to be like protein and veggies and my usual spiel, kind of thing. So it's still allowing yourself to enjoy what your thing is. It's just in what parameters and context. So once you kind of open up that door and look at how you can add to your nutrition and add to your life instead of taking away and shutting things down, can really free you up to approach things like weekends and social situations and start, again, looking at how am I going to, go in with a plan, quick side note, go in with a plan. That will help you out. It'll ease some anxiety going into something like that. It'll give you some tools and it'll help you make choices that are going to benefit you so that you're not blindsided completely.
Yes. So if somebody wants to log a restaurant meal, we get this question all of the time, right? Like, hey, I'm going out to this restaurant. I want to still track my macros. How do I do this?
Yes. Yeah. So if you're using a macro tracking app, obviously a lot of restaurants are actually in there, or you can get something close to it. So, and I've had clients worry about guesstimating restaurant foods, but in reality, that's what, unless you're using a digital scale every time, that's what we're doing. So, and even food labels is a guesstimation. We know the food labels can be off by, what is it, like,
yeah, it's a shocking amount, actually.
Like it's a shocking amount. So we're all doing the best we can with the information we're given. So hats off to you if you're logging your restaurant food. One, you can check if the restaurant you're going to is actually in whatever macro calculator your app you're using. Go ahead and go in there and look. I would say do be mindful, because it'll have, like, if you look at Starbucks or something, it'll be like with cheese, without, like there'll be little different variations built into it. So try and find that if you can. And that can also help you make a decision about what you do want to eat and not eat based on the macros in there, if you're trying to make it fit in with what you're doing. And another rule of thumb is I'll just use a good old precision nutrition kind of measurement thing. So if you're listening, hopefully you're missing out on the visual aids, but here we are. So if you hold up your hand and it's, adjusted to the size of human you are, if you're a larger human, you most likely have larger hands and vice versa. So when we're building a meal, we're usually having protein, fat, carbohydrate, and vegetable, right? So if you open your hand, your palm will be a serving size of protein. So for me, this is probably about 3 ounces. It's going to kick anywhere from 20 to 25 grams. Your thumb is going to be a serving of fats there. So, and if there isn't like an added fat, you can just assume the restaurant is using butter or oil, and that's going to be your fat right there. You can also ask for things without butter, by the way. If you close your fist, that is a serving of vegetables. And if you cup your hand, that is a serving of carbohydrates. I'm going to say it's like 30 to 35 grams, depending on how big or small your hand is. And the thumb, this will probably be about 10 grams of fat-ish, depending on where it's at. So if you know that you need XYZ amount of protein, carbs, and fat, you can use that as a nice kind of measurement for you if you're not able to find it within the app. You can kind of use your handy hand to measure out that meal for yourself. And that might mean you take some extras home, and that's okay. And if neither of those things apply, do your best to guesstimate. So you can use foods that you're used to, chicken breast, steak, salmon, things like that. Do your best, because in reality, that's what we're doing across the board anyway. So also keeping the habit of tracking your food is also helpful. So especially if you are out and about a lot, do need to eat out a lot, making sure you're still keeping up that good habit of tracking your food. And then it just makes you more cognizant of your choices as well.
Agreed. The part about the habit of still tracking your food, because how many times have you not? It's so easy. So if you're in a phase where you're really needing to track your food or wanting to track your food, it's so easy to forget if, like, you had, say you were traveling and you had 2 meals that were untracked, and then you're like, I haven't tracked my food in a week. What the heck? What am I doing with my life?
Yeah, it can definitely snowball. So just keeping that habit is helpful.
What else? What other tips have you got for us?
Um, I like to tell people don't be afraid to ask for modifications to your meals. And if you're in the food service industry and you just rolled your eyes, I apologize. I've been there. I've worked in the food service industry as well. And I've been a shy person and afraid to speak up. But at the end of the day, it's your body and you get to decide what goes in it. So I will ask for things like dressing on the side. I will ask them to omit certain things or ask for if something can be grilled, things like that. Be empowered to do so. The theme here, right? Be empowered. Like, feel free to ask for modifications to your meal, so that that meal is in accordance to what you desire, and then just tip well.
Exactly. Don't forget the tip.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's key is really thinking about what is it that you need and making sure that you're advocating for yourself to get your needs met. And, I have been at restaurants with nightmare people that are making, and when I say nightmare, I mean, they're making like every possible modification that you can think of. And their food still came out. Everything was still fine. So I guarantee you're not going to be as bad as you think you are by just asking for some modifications to your food. So you'll get over it pretty quickly. And it's a very empowering thing to learn. Like, I don't have to eat this exactly as it came. Or even, how about this? Oh, wow, this portion is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. I don't have to eat the whole thing.
Yep. Exactly. And obviously, being an 80s kid, it was like the Finish the Plate Club, right? So, and there's starving kids, and someone's like, you can't mail that food to them. So obviously food waste is a problem, but that's a whole nother thing. But don't feel obligated to eat all the food in front of you. Again, feel free to put that fork down, enjoy your meal, and you don't have to eat to complete fullness over stuffness. And you can take some home, and then you don't have to cook for lunch the next day.
Exactly. And when in doubt, when anxiety strikes or you're not sure how to handle something, or you ended up eating just a lot more food than you originally planned to, if you're working with a coach, this is a great time. Reach out to your coach. Like, hey, this is what I did. Now what do I do? And I promise you, they will not shame you. And if they do, you need to find a new coach. Because like we've all done it. Like there's no shame in going off the plan that you and your coach created for this event, right? If it happens, it happens. But the more your coach knows about the situation, the better they can help you. And that with a plan going forward. And I'm pretty sure, at least if you work with Fiercely Fueled, the plan of what to do next is not going to involve not eating. That's probably not going to be.
Yeah, no.
It's going to be like,
we don't need to start the self-punishment cycle.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I mean, gosh, just speaking as a coach who's worked with so many people, like that is one of the things that breaks my heart the most. And I think really helped me with any lingering issues I had with just my relationship with food, was like seeing the struggle of people that like, okay, they sent their check in and like, I had a quote unquote bad weekend and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm not eating today. And I'm like, no, we can't do that. I know that that's what you wanted to do to fix it, but let's talk through why that's actually going to make the situation worse. And seeing those things change is really cool.
Yep. Or they'll punish themselves with over exercise. Yeah. And it's like, that's one, it's a moot point by then. And two, it just, again, it creates this unhealthy cycle of just kind of self-punishment and needing to earn food and things like that, which we don't want that.
What else? What other tips could you give people for navigating these situations? Because I have to say that having learned through tons of trial and error myself, finally getting to the point where I can walk into any social situation, any holiday, any weekend. I'm not intimidated. It's the most empowering thing. I know what to eat. And I also know that if I eat some foods like, oh, wow, okay, didn't know that was going to be here. Kind of want to eat that. Like, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. But it takes a lot of work to get to that point. If you're in the point where you've been avoiding social stuff because of you don't know how to manage it. So what are some other tips that you have?
Yeah, definitely. Like mentioned, having a plan. So within establishing that plan, it's looking at where you currently are in nutrition. So let's look at the deficit first. If you're in a deficit, whether that's for personal choices or because you need to make weight for a meet. Now, those kind of two camps, if you're doing it for just personal choices, I really feel I've seen it with my clients, seen it with myself. You can absolutely go enjoy, say, going out to dinner with your significant other, having a glass of wine, having a steak, calling it a wrap. You ate great earlier that day. You're doing, good adherence throughout the week. You're not going to gain any weight from maybe the next day you might be a little higher up due to sodium content or, water and all that jazz. But it's not going to be shooting yourself in the foot doing that. And if it's a special occasion or just for your mental sanity that you need to go out and have dinner and a glass of wine, by all means, you're still going to be able to get back on track right after that and continue down your path of your goal there. If you're making weight for a meet, it's looking at where you currently are. Are you on track? If you have a coach, it's probably a good idea to check in with a coach. There could definitely be some strategizing in there of shuffling around macros. So I love to pre-look at menus before I go somewhere. And then I also recommend it to my clients, especially if they want some help picking out what might be some good choices. Touch base with your coach if you have one and see okay, I'm going to this restaurant, but I got to stay on track because X, Y, Z. Here's where I'm going. I'm going to look at the menu, strategizing together. And then, obviously restaurant foods and social situations are going to be higher in fat. 9 times out of 10. That's why everything's delicious.
Yes.
We're hardwired to want high calorie food. So, we're working against evolution here. But, looking at that, maybe you're having less fats throughout the day and you're kind of saving them for said meal. Or if you're like, nope, it's a spaghetti dinner at my mom's house, you might be saving some carbohydrates. That kind of strategizing can definitely take place. Now, if you're in maintenance or you're in a surplus, you obviously have a little more wiggle room. But I do give the caveat of still just basic level good nutrition habits of one, the food's not going anywhere. Take your time. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the food. Like they even say in precision nutrition, put the fork down. Enjoy the food. Enjoy who you're with instead of just rushing through it or overindulging it because, the messengers between our stomach and the brain of hey, I'm full are a little delayed. So we want to give them time to be I'm getting full down here. Can you please slow it down? So taking that moment to kind of pause and slow that down is a little better. And then I really like to ask my clients as well if those around them in their social circle or in their family are aware of their goals. Now, I understand some people wanting to keep their goals to themselves for a variety of reasons. But if you're comfortable and confident sharing with those around you, that can be really beneficial because you're less likely to get, say, razzed by your friends of oh, why aren't you eating such and such? What, are you too good for us now? Kind of thing. Because we've been there. If you've eaten a certain way or you were in the Tupperware decade, someone's kind of razzing you that why are you eating like a goody two shoes kind of thing? Why don't you eat like a normal person? So that can kind of buffer those experiences. And it can also be a great opportunity to share with those you care about about the benefits of eating in a nutritious manner and adhering to your goals, because we're all going to face some kind of objection in some way or another when we're, whether that's external or internal, when we're, navigating these waters. So again, the more tools you can have in your toolbox, the more prepared you can be, the less thrown off you can be. And a couple other ones that I found really helpful is when you are going out, obviously looking at the menu is helpful, is prioritizing protein and vegetables. Eat your vegetables, kids. When you go out to restaurants. So what's a protein forward meal you can get? Making sure veggies are there with you. The fat's probably already going to be there via butter and oil. We all know it's going to show up there. And sometimes I will actually, and I've had clients do this as well, if I'm out to meet some people, I might look at the restaurant and I'll go, yeah, that's not something I want to eat. Or it's like, hey, if I'm going to have an enjoyable meal, it's not going to be that place. It's going to be one of my choosing, but I want to go hang out with these people. I'll eat before I go out, and I'll just maybe get a drink and hang out with people and talk. And maybe I'm lucky. I've never encountered anybody be like, why aren't you eating with us? I'm just like, I'm chatting with people and, oh, I ate before I came. I'm good. I got hungry. I ate.
Yeah. So we forget that we don't have to explain everything to everybody. Right. So there's definitely value in telling your goals to people that you care about. Right. Because they may uplift you. They may help hold you accountable. There's that also, just the telling of the goal is solidifying in your mind, this is actually my goal. But there's also people maybe you don't want to tell your goals to, or you don't feel the need to, right? It's just hey, yeah, I'm going out to meet you. And if someone why aren't you eating? I'm not hungry. I ate before I came. Okay, cool. You don't have to, not everything requires a lengthy explanation. And that, I think, is also a very empowering thing to learn, that you can just simply say, yeah, this is how it is. Or you could say, well, I'm not really crazy about the food at this place, but I really wanted to come meet you. You don't even need to say that. But I will say that there is something about you working to meet your goals, and the people around you who are not working on any goals in their life may feel a little bit bad about themselves. It's like you're holding up a mirror to them and they go, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be doing this too. And they might start to feel insecure, and they maybe will make some nasty comments to you. And just know that that's a reflection of them, not of you. And anyone who has ever worked for anything or towards anything or any sort of self-improvement should get it. And it's the people that don't care about that aren't going to get it. And maybe they are in your close inner circle of people, and you're just going to have to accept that those people aren't going to get it. And there might be a little bit more friction there with them. And those are the people that require less explanation. Yes. Set boundaries.
Yes.
I ate before I came. End of story.
Yes, definitely. And hopefully if they're a good friend or what have you, they're not going to do that to you.
Right.
But I'm sure people have definitely run into that. I've had, clients where their family members were very not supportive. And that's really challenging when you are in a household. You can't just up and leave your family because you're working on eating healthier and you want to look and feel a certain way, and they're berating you the entire time you're in that process. That's definitely challenging. So if that's you, obviously you have a support system here with us, and know that you're not alone in that boat. And, we really, really commend you for, keeping that spine nice and rigid and continuing about your way, because that's not entirely unheard of.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Could tell you a lot of stories over the years of things I have heard and experienced myself. So it's definitely one of those, like, being really solid in your why, kind of like we talked about in the beginning. When you're presented with these situations, being really solid about what it is you're trying to accomplish, why are you trying to accomplish it, and figure out your level of flexibility from there.
Yes, definitely. And, and that's very reminiscent of the really incredible challenge we're going to have coming out soon. That's going to be working on establishing some foundational habits and behaviors and looking at it from that perspective. How can we set ourselves up for success? And even though we want 110 right now, it's building those small sustainable habits, and they stack on each other. And it makes a really solid foundation, and it's helping guide people through that, because we get a lot of information and a lot of do this and don't do that thrown at us. And it can be really hard to kind of filter out all the noise in the nutrition space. So I'm excited for it, because I really think it's going to help just kind of dial it in for people and really paint a nice picture and give people the ability to start making those choices for themselves and start looking at their behaviors and habits in an objective way without getting lost in the feelings so much, and not running away from the feelings, acknowledging what they are and why they are, but establishing those values. Why is that important? What does that look like? And starting to pinpoint things so that we can start to make those shifts.
Yes. And you said in an objective way, which is, I think, important, because we know now that behavior, there is a hard science with behavior, right?
Yes, it is applied behavior analysis.
Yes. And so there's so much available now, resources available now, with actually developing good behaviors. I shouldn't say good behaviors, behaviors that you want versus behaviors that you don't want. Right.
Yes. Yes.
And for so long, I think, Joni, especially you and I are around the same age, our generation, it was just like white knuckle everything, make extreme changes right off the bat.
Yes.
Like throw out complete food groups, or, fast for ridiculous amounts of time. Like everything has to be hard. It has to be immediate. And you don't learn anything about the process of what you're actually trying to do. And so I'm super excited actually for us we'll be offering this program, I think right around the first of the year, of like actually learning, how do you develop the behaviors and the habits that you've been trying to develop for like over and over and over and struggling to, because you don't know the actual science behind building the habits and changing your behaviors. And that is super fascinating stuff to me. I love it. And it just makes things, when you actually work with how your brain works, it's so much easier. You're like, oh, this is how it works.
Yeah, exactly. It's simple and complicated all at the same time.
Right.
But, behavior is the same for all living organisms, and why we do what we do when we're all just trying to get our needs met. And how do we utilize that to get behaviors out of ourselves that we want and alter them? And, part of it is our environment, and things like that. So it's going to be great. I'm really excited.
Yes. Awesome. So you guys look for that. We'll make an announcement that'll come out sometime in the first part of the year. But in the meantime, if you guys want to work with Joni, you can put in a application. We'll link it in the show notes to work with her, and she's amazing. But Joni, thank you so much for being here. This is a topic I feel like everyone has anxiety around, and I think that I can speak for our listeners that I feel more calm about these situations, just talking to you about it. And I can't wait for the next show that you come on.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been great.
If you've ever felt like you've started and stopped with your nutrition more times than you can count, we created our latest program, Fierce Habits, just for you. This is your toolkit to building solid nutritional habits. We created the 6-week program to help you build habits using evidence-based behavior science that works. You guys know we stand behind evidence-based nutrition, and this takes it one step further with behavior science. You'll finally create lasting change that sticks even when life happens, which is where 99% of people fail. But that's not going to be you after you go through this program. You're going to learn and practice implementing the tools to make nutrition fit your life once and for all. And the best part is this is repeatable. You can repeat this process over and over throughout your life to build solid habits whenever you want. Go to guide.fiercelyfueled.com/habits to get signed up. Space is limited, but our podcast listeners get access before we release it to the general public. Early bird pricing is going on right now for a short time, so go grab your spot for $39. We'll see you there.